Welcome to Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Christensen. Look, you know that between the latest online fads and the crazy media headlines, it's easier than ever to get confused about your health. And you and I just want to feel better and live longer. We want to know what works. And we can't wait for further studies. We need to make decisions today based on the best evidence we've got. Well, that's exactly what this show is here for. So let's get to it.
Hi there, this is Dr. Linda Kashaba from Integrative Health. Would you like some help with your thyroid? We would absolutely love to help you out. And guess what? We can even do remote care. Please call us today at 480-657-0003 to set up your first appointment. If you mention code podcast20, you will get 20% off from your first visit. That phone number again is 480-657-0003, and the code is podcast20. Can't wait to meet you.
Hey, Dr. C here with you. So today's guest is Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Joel is a force of nature. He's a board-certified family physician, nutritional researcher, and 6-time New York Times best-selling author, done some big PBS specials. He serves as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. He's published numerous articles in medical journals. He's on the faculty of Northern Arizona University. Most recent books would be Eat to Live Quick and Easy Cookbook, and then Fast Food Genocide. Dr. Fuhrman and I talked about the role that plant foods have in promoting human health. And specifically, we talked about grains, intact whole grains, legumes, and nuts and seeds. There are a lot of concerns about these foods having negative effects for inflammation or autoimmune states. And Dr. Fuhrman talked about a lot of his clinical information in which he's seen these foods reverse inflammatory states and autoimmune diseases and other health conditions. So please enjoy this time I had with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Dr. Fuhrman, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So this topic is really about plant foods, about grains, beans, seeds especially. And there's reasons why people have been fearful of them, and some have cut them out, arguing that it's important to do so. And I've followed your career for some time. We've connected before. You know, you've had vast experience of people who have consumed these foods and had radical improvements to their health. So that's the point.
Well, I'm happy to share and to discuss these issues in more depth. I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah. You know, one mnemonic you've talked about has been the G-bombs, as far as some of the healthiest foods that make the biggest difference with many conditions. And you've seen people over the decades for many different disease states, including autoimmunity. So yeah, just any experience you've had with autoimmune disease specifically that you'd like to share with us.
Well, yeah, let me just go back a bit and say that the diet that's most effective at slowing aging and promoting longevity, reversing heart disease, diabetes, even cancer, even early stage cancers, is also most effective therapeutically with conditions like fibromyalgia, asthma, allergies, and then autoimmune disease. I mean, some of the most exciting parts of my career are taking patients with lupus. I had a woman who was on the National Renal Transplant list with a creatinine of 4.2.
Oh, wow.
Waiting for a new kidney. And she, shockingly to me, she made a complete recovery and her creatinine went down to 0.8, which is, perfect. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that was possible at that point in my career. I've had so many patients make recoveries. I've even published a series of published articles in the scientific literature. Most recently, this last year, I published a psoriasis case in the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. Seeing many cases with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. But in any case, one thing we have to know is that we're talking about here is that a nutritarian diet, I use that word nutritarian, I coined a word to represent a diet style that's rich in anti-cancer micronutrients, but doesn't miss any nutrient that could help human health and longevity, very comprehensive in its exposure to nutrients, while at the same time not consuming empty calories and junk food or harmful substances, removing all the harmful substances, packing your diet with nutritive substances that extend lifespan. And we get consistent results with people getting well from autoimmune disease. Occasionally, there's some cases that are sensitive to individual foods that could be considered healthy. There are occasionally some people that, especially in the early phases of their coming off their more conventional diets where they've developed food allergies. And what I'm suggesting now is we see food allergies actually get better and improve as the years go by of their body eating a diet so rich in nutrients. And we usually avoid the food allergies at first, but then eventually start to give small amounts as the years go by and they're getting better health. But it's very rare that individual foods flare people up as much as it's the whole dietary portfolio as a whole that's pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. And what I'm saying right now is a diet rich in vegetables, when you take the oils out, the heated oils in particular, as well as baked carbohydrates, which form acrylamide. So the combination of the glycemic effect of the diet, the baked acrylamides, which then build up advanced glycation end products in the body, fuel autoimmune phenomenon, as does, of course, reactive oxygen species in general, which those reactive oxygen species are kept in control by having a diet high in antioxidants and phytochemicals. So that's where a nutritarian diet shines. And I'm also saying that when your diet is so rich in plant-derived phytochemicals, like, especially found in G-bombs, greens and onions and mushrooms and beans, these foods, the G-bombs, the acronym GBOMBS, greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds, that acronym is there to represent the foods that have the most scientific support to show their anti-cancer effects.
So I think an important distinction to draw is that many have gotten wrapped up in looking at ways in which things that are really phytonutrients can also be plant anti-nutrients or plant insecticides or plant pesticides. And then the fear about how these things could theoretically work in isolation gets taken completely out of context of how that plant works in the context of the whole plant or the whole diet in actual humans.
Yeah, I think that stems from the backlash from the popularity now of the plant-based and vegan movement. I mean, we're talking about 25 to 30% of younger people now are switching to vegan or near-vegan diets for the environmental reasons, to save the planet, to reduce global warming. We have a lot of people doing it for health reasons. And I think the meat-based and animal product-based industry is very threatened and of losing its customers, and because of the health benefits in conjunction with the environmental benefits. And then these people or these hypotheses get birthed to help bring back the power to people who want to eat a carnivorous type diet, and they want to support that, and they're looking for reasons why they can support themselves. It's like people wanting to support their political views with any kind of thing they can muster, whether it's true or not, just to keep the way they want to think. I think the unquestionable findings of the last decade is that as animal protein increases in a person's diet, it shortens their lifespan, increasing the risk of cardiovascular death and cancer death via multiple mechanisms. We're talking about one, raising IGF-1 too high in unfavorable levels. We're talking about production of gram-negative bacteria in the gut, leading to increased production of TMAO or trimethylamine oxide, which is a pro-inflammatory. We're talking about excitation from the lack of antioxidants and free radicals in the diet, and more reactive oxygen species produced. And they promote angiogenesis. Was a whole host of reasons why diets richer in animal products shorten life, and we give credence to studies that have large numbers of people and are followed for decades, and they look at hard endpoints like death or heart attack rates. And I could say that all the studies that start to increase animal products in the diet, we're talking about the American diet that eats 33% or 30 to 33% already. But when we look at, as we go from 10% to 20%, heart attack rates start to skyrocket. As you go to 30%, almost the whole population is at risk. We're talking about animal products are a known accelerated cardiovascular and cancer deaths. And there's no studies, and I should say two things clear. Every study with large numbers of people shows that higher amounts shorten lifespan. Every study with large numbers of people looking at hard endpoints show that as you increase animal products, you increase all-cause mortality. There's no studies that show that reduce plant foods, eat less vegetables and beans, and eat more animal products and live longer with large numbers of people. There's no studies that detect that. So people are believing in a hypothesis that's already been disproven because they want to accept something because of food they want to eat for some reason. It's okay, it's okay if you want to smoke cigarettes, but at least you have to face the reality. You're taking a risk if you do smoke cigarettes. And we don't know for sure what threshold of animal product consumption tips it over into the danger zone, whether that's 5, 7, 8, or 10%, and that could be different from person to person. But we know it has to be a relatively low part of a person's diet in order for them to achieve decent health and a decent longevity. And I'm suggesting at this point in human history, we have an unprecedented opportunity to live really long, to push the envelope of 100 years old on large numbers of people, because we can eat a diet that's so scientifically designed to extend human lifespan. And so we have two choices. We can eat like processed foods and fast foods and soda and fried foods and donuts, but we can also eat lots of green vegetables and beans and onions and mushrooms and prolong our lifespan. Whether there's an occasional person who's sensitive to a certain type of food, they're allergic to nuts or they're sensitive to certain compounds in beans, those are relatively rare. And using those rare outliers to be the foundation of a dietary recommendation is just scamming people. It's just tricking people because it's not what you see in reality. In reality, if people want to get well, sure, there's a certain person that can't eat beans, maybe 1 in 50, and you might find a person who's sensitive to those things, but the vast majority of people, of course, these are longevity-producing foods, and to scare people into not eating them for an occasional person with an allergy to something is just inappropriate.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that the rate of legume allergies or sensitivities are quite rare, and I've seen something happen that, I don't know, I think if someone cuts out them as a category, there can be changes to their bowel flora that make it to where they don't tolerate them as well. They've really gotten a depleted flora and they can react more so in ways they wouldn't otherwise. And yeah, if they just phase them back in, they often do really well. But have you seen that come across that? Or?
Yes, beans are the richest source of resistant starch, which means a large segment of their carbohydrates are resistant to enzymatic degradation. So they're degraded by and fermented by bacteria in the gut. In doing so, they function as a prebiotic, encouraging the growth of the bacteria that are required to digest them as you get used to eating them. So that a person who's not used to eating beans will be more gassy from beans, but a person who eats beans, multiple times a day won't get much gas from them because they have a really good production of bacteria that digest the beans. But here's the good news is that if you start with small amounts, increase them gradually, and develop the bacteria utilized to digest beans, those bacteria become very adherent to the microvilli in the digestive in the wall of the small intestines, creating a biofilm that slows the glycemic effect of foods. And scientists call that the second meal effect. It means that a person who regularly eats beans, then when they eat it, which are relatively low glycemic because beans have such slowly digestible starches mixed with resistant starches, but then it makes other foods much lower glycemic. So when you have that mango and oatmeal for breakfast, the moderately glycemic mango becomes lower glycemic because the thickened microbiome, being the beans, means that the bacterial production of that biofilm slows the glucose absorption of every food you eat, not just foods eaten, not just the beans and not just foods eaten with bean meals. And that's one of the most protective factors of these anti-nutrients that people are claiming aren't good for us, like phytates and lectins, when in fact the phytates and lectins have added benefits of reducing the glycemic effects of carbohydrates because they slow glucose absorption as well.
That second meal phenomenon is a really awesome thing. I'm glad you brought that up. People often don't hear about that. And I've seen data saying that if someone has a regular intake of high RS foods like beans, that can last for a day or longer. So yeah, it's a powerful, powerful effect.
Yeah, I think, well, the point is when you eat beans regularly, it's always lasting. We're not eating beans once a week. We're having little beans every day. It overall has the effect of lowering glycemic effect. And there are 4 foods that are most beneficial to the lining of your digestive tract, promoting the most beneficial bacteria, 2 raw and 2 cooked. And the 2 raw foods are raw green cruciferous vegetables like, of course, arugula, watercress, kale, bok choy, raw scallion or onion, and then the cooked mushrooms, and of course, cooked beans. And people are underestimate the incredible power of unprocessed soybeans. That you take a dried soybean, you soak it in water, and you cook it into a soup or a chili, or you use, edamame. We're not talking about soy milk or soy or tofu, which are made from soy milk, has the fiber removed, but a tremendous beneficial effect on using the soy fiber in lifespan benefits and anti-cancer benefits. So that it also has a beneficial effect on healthy bacteria as well. So yes, beans have, so all these things that people are claiming are negatives, actually, if you scrutinize the scientific literature, you show tremendous positive effects.
I've realized there's about 3 different ways you can go about gathering information. You can imagine something, you can observe something, or you can test something. And with all the complexities of the chemistry of plants, and so much data in biochemistry, you can imagine almost anything and you can make it sound really plausible. But when you observe populations, when you see what happens, or when you actually test things and do interventional studies, you'll find out things that are quite different, that what we imagine doesn't always pan out.
That's right. And you sometimes need large numbers of people to see trends. Not that there aren't individual genetic differences among people, but you have to study large numbers of people to see trends. And what we find is, surprisingly, as people think we're all so different, and this diet's right for that person, this diet's right for that person. But when we look at the studies, it shows the opposite. It shows that we're more similar than we ever thought. And the vast majority of people do better with the same type of dietary program over the long haul. We're not as different as we think we are.
As omnivores, there's almost nothing we could do dietarily that would make us fall dead tomorrow. So in the short term, people can do all sorts of different things and see not always an obvious short-term effect. But none of us, in the big scheme of things biochemically, right, we're all quite similar. None of us photosynthesize. We're all going through the same chemical pathways of breaking down our food into energy.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating? There's some parts of plant foods that our body's immune system are dependent on in a way that are like shocking. Like, for example, we have an ergothioneine receptor on the wall of our cells, and ergothioneine is a product that only is high in a little bit in beans, but it's mostly in mushrooms. What I'm saying now, that the human body develops a receptor for a compound only found in beans and mushrooms, mostly in mushrooms, that helps our body clear, do repair and prevent methylation defects and broken DNA cross-links to prevent cancer. So we're saying that, and they're even finding that some people with an ergothioneine receptor defect are more prone to autoimmune diseases, and they do better if they have even more mushrooms to enhance to activate those receptors, because they're not easily activated by mushrooms in those people because who are more prone to autoimmune phenomenon. But the point I'm making right now, it's almost as if our genetics were designed over the millenniums of nature, from, I guess, to be, as we're mushrooms and we're natural in our environment. We're a natural food for humans. So we're saying, like, wild onions, leafy greens, and mushrooms form an incredible basis of optimal human immune function. And without those foods in your diet, you're walking around with half a deck, because your body can't be maximally protected, because our body is designed to be utilizing those nutrients.
We'll be right back after a word from Integrative Health.
We hope you are enjoying this episode of Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. This is Dr. Linda Koshaba at Integrative Healthcare. So often we hear from our patients that their primary care physician has told them that their thyroid and hormone levels are fine, and they shouldn't worry. But the patients still have symptoms of severe fatigue, thinning hair, and weight issues. Unfortunately, this is too common with thyroid care. The good news is that we can help. There is hope. The doctors at Integrative Health, including myself, specialize in naturally treating thyroid, hormone, and adrenal issues. We would love to get you started on the path of ideal health. From the comfort of your own home, you can actually get treatment with one of our doctors at Integrative Health via a telemedicine appointment. Go to integrativehealthcare.com and become a new patient today. If you use the code PODCAST20, you get 20% off your new patient visit. Again, that website is integrativehealthcare.com and use code podcast20. Get back on the road to thriving.
And now, back for more medical myths, legends, and fairy tales. I'd love to go a little deeper on the distinction you made of raw and cooked. So beans, straightforward, no issue there. But tell me a bit more about the distinction as to the importance of raw for some of the allium plants, the onions, and then also the mushrooms being cooked, and then raw for the cruciferous.
Mushrooms have a mild carcinogen called agarotine that blows off with the littlest bit of cooking. But interestingly, these protective nutrients in mushrooms, like they have in them, angiogenesis inhibitors and aromatase inhibitors. Now, aromatase are the enzymes that produce estrogen, and we know that fat on the body is very inflammatory hypoxic tissue, which means it doesn't get a great blood supply. It produces a lot of lipokines and cytokines and pro-inflammatory substances that excite the aromatase production, increasing estrogen production, raising risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. So, but mushrooms oppose that. Mushrooms have aromatase inhibitors that block the stimulation of aromatase, like the medication tamoxifen does. But mushrooms also have angiogenesis inhibitors, and angiogenesis is actually promoting growth of new blood vessels to feed cancers, to fuel fat. Insulin and the excess insulin from high glycemic carbohydrates promote fat storage, and one of the ways they promote fat storage is by promoting angiogenesis, producing new blood supply, new blood growth to fuel the growth of fat.
So you can grow new fat cells, yeah.
And in doing so, as you promote the growth of fat cells, you permit the growth of cancer, because cancer cells also secrete a lot of angiogenesis promoters to facilitate their own growth. And mushrooms oppose the growth of fat cells and the growth of cancer cells, simultaneously, of course. So while these things are so mushrooms are just tremendously powerful. And then they have certain types of lectins called antigen-binding lectins that help with cell-to-cell communication and can actually help the body's own immune system recognize cells that are becoming abnormal. So our immune system can, with its natural killer T cells, can go in there and remove and cause apoptosis or destruction of cells that might have become senescent, damaged, and could have led to become cancerous. The body can remove them before they can cause you harm. And mushrooms also play a role in that detection and, of course, illuminating those cells so the immune system can recognize and remove them. So mushrooms are such an incredible food. And what I'm saying right now is that when we cook the mushroom, or, steam it, wok it, put it in a soup, it doesn't lose those particular phytonutrients. Whereas other phytonutrients might be more heat sensitive, the mushrooms enhance their phytochemical activity when they're heated gently or steamed or sauteed in water or something.
Have you got some favorite types? I've seen data arguing that even just plain old white cap mushrooms can be quite useful and have some very positive properties.
Yes, all mushrooms are useful. I think that the oyster mushrooms have the most ergothioneine, but that doesn't mean I'm saying to people to eat mostly or to rely on oyster mushrooms, because each mushroom has its own advantages, and a lot of them, like you're saying, even the white button, cremini, portobello, the cheaper mushrooms still have very powerful anti-angiogenesis effect and anti-fat storage effects and anti-estrogenic effects. So so all mushrooms are beneficial, and we try to get mushroom variety into people's dietary exposure. Because not something people know that are that healthy to be eating.
And then the point about the raw for the onions and the crucifers, could you mention a bit more about that distinction, please?
Well, in the cruciferous vegetables is an enzyme called myrosinase, which as you break in the cell wall, it's housed in a little packet in the cell wall, and as you chew the vegetable, you break open the cell wall, and it mixes with the glucosinolate in the cell, forming the ITCs. The ITCs are the isothiocyanates. There are hundreds of them in green cruciferous, and those isothiocyanates like sulforaphane, indole 3-carbinol, and dimet. There's a whole bunch of these that have powerful anti-cancer effects. And so we form those anti-cancer compounds in the mouth as we're chewing, and the better we chew the arugula, the watercress, the kale, the better with the bok choy, the better we chew those raw vegetables, the more ITCs that are formed, because the more you break open those cells. But if you cook it first, you can deactivate that enzyme. If you wok it or steam it just for a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, you don't destroy all the enzyme activity. It's when you cook it like 8 to 12, and of course, over 10 minutes, you start to see those enzyme activity really disappearing or going down low. A little bit of cooking isn't bad. It could be good, but a lot of cooking, or certainly overcooking the food, you certainly destroy the activity of those enzymes. Likewise, there's an enzyme called alliinase, Alliinase. You only work with two L's and two I's. They're right next to each other. Double L, double I. You can use that in Scrabble and get triple points. Alliinase. But anyway,
a lot of double I words, a lot of double I words in thyroid chemistry, but not a lot of double L words there.
Yeah. So then you have it makes your eyes tear from the formation of sulfenic acid. Your eyes burn, but as you're forming that, you're forming a lot of organosulfide compounds as you're cutting open that onion and releasing the alliinase enzyme to form a chemical reaction. That's why you don't want to take away the part of the onion right under the skin, or the part near the root is more powerful. People usually aiming them away or throwing those parts away so they don't cause their eyes to tear, but that's the part that's most nutritious, right under the paper and right near the root. So we should be utilizing that and utilizing it raw. But you can also, in I teach people this nutritarian cooking style, how to maintain these nutrients, how to blend the scallion, onion, or shallot while it's still raw, activate those compounds, and then put them in the soup to cook as a slurry. Because then the soup wouldn't destroy the compounds that will form, but it would have inhibited them from forming if it wasn't cut or creamed or blended first. The same thing you can do with cruciferous. You can take like a green, your collard greens and mustard greens, and blend it into a little bit of soup liquid while it's still raw, and then put it to cook. Because the ITCs are relatively stable under heat, but not the myrosinase that would have catalyzed their formation.
Something I was hoping you would mention, I know you do retreats in which people get to have just intensive care and learn detail about how to cook, how to manage your lifestyle. And these are changes that can be hard for some folks to learn and stick with. So this is a way in which they can get just intensive training on this. And could you just talk a bit more about how those work and what people experience in them?
Yes, I have two types of programs, but keep in mind that, the problem is so many people who are overweight and have medical problems, and even autoimmune conditions, they're food addicts, and they know they should eat healthier, but they have trouble doing it and trouble complying. And that's why I have this what I call Eat to Live retreat in San Diego, North San Diego County. It's a beautiful place that's opened all year round. It's ongoing, and people come and stay for 2 to 3 months. And sometimes they might be overweight here to lose weight, but the longer they're away from their addictive triggers, the easier it gets for them to eat healthfully. And then they can learn how to make that, as you were saying, they could learn the recipes from my chefs, how to make it taste great. It's amazing how their taste buds start to prefer eating this way. And their ability they don't need all the salt and sugar and fried foods anymore, because they really, their taste buds get stronger after they're getting healthier and taking those foods away. What I'm saying right now is I've observed over the last 30 years of my medical practice, no matter where you go for a week or two, invariably, the vast majority of people don't sustain those changes for the rest of their life. And you don't get well, and there's no benefit to dieting, and you don't get well from your heart disease or your, whatever it is you're trying to repair. Lower your blood pressure to normal, get rid of your diabetes, get rid of your asthma. It's not a benefit to do it for a short period of time unless it changes the way you're going to eat forever. And by having a facility where people can come and stay longer, and they get psychological counseling about food addiction, and they really learn to retrain their taste buds and learn how to make this diet fantastic. They always say the mental fog lifts, they think more creatively, they leave with a new enthusiasm about life, and their health is transformed, and they can maintain this now when they go home and continue the benefits and maintain the benefits. Like, for example, this woman came in and lost 50 pounds while she was here for a couple of months. And then she lost another 150 pounds the year she went home, where she had bounced around on diets for years and years, unable to maintain anything. But because it's like, I'm caring for these people and I'm educating them, but it's much more than that. It's that you can. And I've tried to do that. I do have getaways where people come for a week, but those are more like vacations where people come to a nice, beautiful place, a nice hotel, and they have lectures and they have fun activities, and we all spend time together. And some people are there to transform their lives, but it's not as transformational. It's not guaranteed to make it easy to do this for the rest of your life as much as if you can, have the ability the resources to get to really stay here a longer period of time. That's really most beneficial.
You talked about taste buds changing, and I think a shift that can happen too is that people, you mentioned just feeling great and having a new experience of that, of wellness. I think if someone really gets that experience deeply enough and understands that, that's really the ultimate hedonism, is to feel your best, that at that point, there's a shift in the taste, but there's also just a shift in priorities. And they realize that the things that used to give them just temporary pleasure before, now they know that they get much greater pleasure from other choices. And they start to psychologically reassign how they do things based upon how they're going to feel afterwards. Is that an observation you've had as well? Or?
Oh, absolutely. But, the only thing is that I do see, frankly, a lot of people who are really they really needy of being here because they're really sickly and they need to get well. I mean, so many people are here because they were told they need angioplasty or bypass surgery, and they're like 50 to 100 pounds overweight, and they come in here because they don't want to have their chest cut open and have surgery done to remove their heart disease. But the amazing thing is they get better. The chest pains go away. It's just utterly amazing. What I'm saying here now is that, putting a stent in to your heart is like a foreign body that's forever putting you at risk of having a clot in your future. And you got to stay on blood thinners the rest of your life. And it's like barbaric. And cutting people open instead of telling them to eat healthy. I'm always like disagreeing with their cardiologist. They're in the hospital and they call me up on the phone and I say, get out of the hospital, leave AMA. Don't let them do the surgery. We can get you better. You'll feel better in a few weeks here and you'll be on the road to reversing this disease. You'll drop to 50 pounds. So what I'm saying right now is that, these people, I think, they're motivated to get here because sometimes they've got a point of no return and they just want to get well and they don't want to, but then once they're here, it's transformational to who they are intellectually. They feel better about themselves and they're usually partially depressed or dysthymic. You wouldn't believe how processed foods and American diet doesn't just physically destroy people. It destroys their emotional outlook and enthusiasm about life and creativity. And almost everybody says the fog lifts and I'm much happier and doing better at I'm excited about life. And they also love the food and become grateful. They become grateful for the beauty of nature's bounty and thankful for how it's a complete different attitude, is seeing like how this food is so healing. And the soils that, so it's just like, it's really, how should I say, it's exciting for me to see these transformations. I love doing what I do,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think when someone's had that experience, then in the future, they're looking at processed food and they're not just seeing it as something that gives them a quick boost of, feeling good for temporarily. They're seeing it as a loss of all these positive gains that they've had.
Right. It's like you say that you couldn't get 10 men to tie me down and force that down my throat. You know what I mean? They want their banana ice cream made with frozen bananas, some macadamia nuts, and some real vanilla bean powder because their taste buds are so acute. They enjoy the natural flavors. Now they don't need things so sweet anymore, and they could, it's funny because if you could taste the bleach and the chemicals and so what people are eating out there in the, in fairy tale land, people believe in these fairy tales that you're going to eat you can go to doctors and doctors will give you pills and medicines that's going to make you live longer and prevent you from having heart attacks and cancers. And it's like saying you could smoke cigarettes and looking for a magic pill so you can not make smoking no longer dangerous. It's like the point I'm making right now is that we're each responsible for our own health and we are what we eat. We become what we ate in our past. And we can control our health destiny with excellent nutrition. It's the only thing that controls our health destiny, not access to medical care, not medicines, it's really what we do at home and what we do in our own life and creating that environment, that healthy environment for ourselves.
That's awesome. I can't think of a better synopsis. Any other closing points you wanted to mention? Or?
Well, my message is all about giving people who need this hope and that don't think you can't get well, because when you optimize all the factors and customize and optimize them for people's nutritive needs. It's just amazing how the body becomes this miraculous healing machine, because people live in fear. They're fear of cancer. They're walking around afraid they're going to have a heart attack. They're used to going to doctors, and they're afraid of everything that happens to them, every little ache and pain. Is that a clot in my leg? I got a spasm in my leg. Did I just throw a blood clot that's going to go into my lung and cause a pulmonary embolism? I got to rush to the doctor. Is this cancer, this lump of, their whole life revolves around fear. And so what I'm saying right now is that not only are we giving people hope, but we're taking away that fear. And that fear shortens their lifespan and destroys the quality of their life. Instead of living with confidence, enthusiasm, and knowledge that they can take, that their body is there for its own, to take care of you, not to hurt you. So it's a completely different outlook. And it's just been so rewarding, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunities I've had to work with so many people in this field and be a part in their transformation. So that's, I'm always excited about talking about it, sharing, and doing this kind of work.
That's awesome. Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much for doing what you do. And yeah, we're going to get links to your site. To best one for folks to go to is drfuhrman.com, and we'll get links about this retreat. And really appreciate your time and helping just set this straight. Hey, Dr. Christensen here. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode. Is there a topic you'd like me to cover? I'd love to hear from you. Just go to Dr. Alan Christensen on Facebook or Instagram, write your question, and use the hashtag #MedicalMyths. Did you find this show helpful? If so, please take a minute and leave us a rating on iTunes so that others can know. Thanks much, and I'll be back with you real soon. Bye-bye.